Good morning, Canada. Welcome back to another. Oh my God, that is off to a bad start. Let me take it all back. Good morning, Canada. Welcome back to another episode of Question Period. Today's October 7th. October 1 year. Oh my God. Today's October 7th, not 27th, for crying out loud. And we have another crazy day of Question Period lined up for you guys. Pierre Poilievre is scheduled to be in the House, as I think is Jagmeet Singh. Justin Trudeau is in Ottawa. We just don't know where he is, right? Where is Trudeau? Nobody knows, frankly. This is going to be really good. Lots of tensions, right? Lots and lots of tensions. You have the Bloc that has threatened to call a vote of non-confidence if they don't get what they want by early next week, which is early today. I can do that accent, by the way. It's not demeaning. It's not to shit on French people. I am French, and my first language is French, and I learned English in grade 5. So I have an exception. I've got the French card. You know what I'm saying? So Bloc is potentially going to call a vote of non-confidence or vote in favor of a vote of non-confidence. But, and that's a big but, Justin Trudeau is going to try to do prorogation. Wow, what the hell is that? It's basically something that allows Trudeau to pause all of government, not this shutout, not this freeze out, but pause all of government, everything. No question period, no committee meetings. The doors would be locked to Parliament Hill. Nobody goes in until further notice, which could be, as long as into the new year. So it's a race to see who is going to do what first. I don't think we've ever really been in this position before where there's like an actual standoff as to what's going to happen. Now, Justin Trudeau hasn't confirmed whether he's going to do this. You have officials, for crying out loud. What the hell's going on with me today? You know what's going on? It might look like, I don't know if it looks like I'm crying. I blew my nose. It's that time of year. I blew my nose really hard right before I went live, and I started to cry. You know, does that ever happen to you? I know it doesn't happen to Trudeau. He blows something, not his nose, and he starts crying. But nonetheless, that's the difference between Trudeau and everybody else, right? All right, let's get it together here, folks. Let's get it together. I need to finish this coffee and try not to yell. So prorogation. We think. Me, myself, a lot of other people, you got CTV panelists, you got political analysts, professionals. They think that it's within the playing cards for Justin Trudeau to do this. There is a tremendous amount of heat on Justin Trudeau right now with the Bloc, with them trying to call a vote of non-confidence, with the documents being pretty much not subpoenaed, but kind of close to it by the RCMP, or at least that ongoing RCMP investigation. There's just a lot of tension. So it's Trudeau's Hail Mary. It's his final attempt at just remaining in power for a little bit longer. So that's the state of Canada. Tensions are pretty high, as you can imagine. So Question Period is going to be a zoo. It's going to be absolutely insane. Lots of people. Oh my God, guys, we've been live for like 2 minutes. How's there 1,000 people in here? Holy smokes. All right, let's get the likes in, shall we? Let's try and get 300, 400, 500 likes, as many likes as we possibly can. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss live streams like this. And of course, it wouldn't be a good stream if I didn't tell you about how to save on the carbon tax, potentially, allegedly. There's this awesome premium insulated hoodie, which is linked down below in the description. You can buy this hoodie, Freedom Hoodie. There's also a whole whack of other merch, such as the sticker packs right now, which are 15% off for channel members. This channel or MSB. The code to use is on the community tab. So you can only see it if you're a channel member. So the link for this is actually in the pinned comment of the live stream. You get all 5 of these stickers at a very good price. Even without the code, they are discounted. And then you have, of course, this other sticker pack here. So lots of stuff, folks. Lots of stuff linked in that merch site down below. All right, 1,200 people. Wow, likes, or the people keep coming in here. Let's get into this. So they're doing a privilege amendment right now on the House floor. They are only scams. Not too bad, huh? Not too bad. Yeah, that came out of here. They're doing privilege amendment right now. They're talking some back and forths. They are going to start a question period in about 35-ish minutes. They do statements by members first. So you got some time, folks. You got some time. Get yourself a coffee. Get yourself situated. Get yourself comfortable in the toilet if you're watching it while you're taking a poop, or you sit down to pee if you're a liberal or a woman. You never know. You got to be inclusive. It's Canada after all. So let's take a look at what's going on the House floor, everybody. All right, here we go.
I'd like to thank my colleague for having on Mrs. Matapédia.
P.S. This part is extremely boring, so you got a lot of time to get prepared.
It's a pleasure to hear from someone in this House who offered such an excellent overview of the issue at hand. I am very grateful for the way she has taken this matter seriously. Now, this motion says that the entire matter should be referred to the Standing Committee on Procedure and House Affairs. What does my colleague think? Does she think that we should indeed wrap up the debate here and refer the matter to committee? The Honourable Member. I'd like to thank my colleague for her kind words. Yes, I concluded my speech by saying,
who do I think will win the BC election? Rustad.
I'm
extremely excited to vote for Rustad myself.
Problems. And as I was saying, we've heard from a number of people on this at committee, the Ethics Committee. The Conservative Party was clear in its motion. It's asking for this to be referred to the Procedure Committee. Not necessarily to address the actual problems that happened at SDTC, but instead...
I'll use this time to read off some super chats, huh? You're not missing a whole lot. Matthew Gallagher with the $2. Make Canada great again.
Pleased that I offered
Put JT behind bars.
The situation.
I mean, there is a possibility.
Something that has to do with her.
There's a possibility. I don't want to say a high likelihood, but there is a possibility that, if this RCMP investigation continues and escalates, that he could be held accountable for, the crimes that he's committed.
Is that what the...
Will he go to jail? I mean, we can be optimistic.
Is going to be debating the issue of production of documents,
but it's unlikely.
Ask for them. I'm not sure, but we do need to address the matter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a question of curiosity for my colleague. Would you simply ignore fraud and unethical behavior if you were the owner of a company, or would you launch an immediate investigation to get to the root of the problem so it could be addressed and stopped?
The Honourable Member for Avignon and Lamitis Matapédia. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In this situation, it's very clear. No one would say, let's let these problems go on without getting to the bottom of them. Our stance has been very clear on this since the beginning. If there is an inquiry needed, let's do it. Do we need to spend dozens of hours talking about this in the House rather than debating legislation before the House and making progress on that legislation? Our constituents expect us to move forward on legislation, so that's the real question.
For Cowichan Malhan Langford.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague for her intervention. I think she very clearly laid it out that, in order for the House to act upon this matter, we do one day have to arrive at a vote. And I have heard Conservatives making the argument that they need to prosecute this case in debate, but so far through their speeches, I'm hearing the same talking points repeated again and again. There are no new ideas being advanced through debate, so I'm glad she acknowledged that. But my question through you, Mr. Speaker, to my honourable colleague is, there has been a lot of finger-pointing between Liberals and Conservatives today, and does my honourable colleague think that the Conservative arguments might have a little bit more legitimacy if their record during the Harper years weren't just as bad as the Liberals?
The Honourable Member for Avignon, Lamitis Matapédia. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank my colleague for his question. It's interesting that he is asking me this question because we sit on the Public Safety Committee together and we spend most of our time in committee watching the Liberals and Conservatives blame
Matthew Gallagher with the other $2. Hug a thug. Governing must go.
So here we are trying to bring up constructive matters, trying to...
Pierre's on point with that.
I'm not here to
Thank you, Matthew. I
blame
appreciate it.
any specific
And
group or
Stephen
person for
Hickey,
the
Stephen
mistakes which
Hickey,
occurred.
Stephen
That's
Hickey,
not
the
my
$2.
role.
Love your live
What
streams.
I
Thank you,
am
sir.
insisting on is that
I appreciate
this
that.
Parliament called on the government to table documents. They did not do so, so clearly then it's the Liberal government's fault. The honourable member for Rivière du Nord. Rivière des Mille-Îles. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Here is my question. Does my colleague agree that, on the one hand, Conservatives are working to block and jam up Parliament? They are taking hostage all members of Parliament in this place. So on the one hand, we have those Conservatives, and on the other hand, the Liberals are not doing anything to get us past this. Would my colleague agree that this contributes to making Parliament completely dysfunctional and that it has been dysfunctional for 2 weeks? The Honourable Member for Avignon, Lamitis, Matan, Matapédia. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I absolutely agree with what my colleague just said. Here we are after 15 hours of debate on this question of privilege. Maybe the government prefers this debate on the question of privilege rather than debating its legislation and making progress on legislative priorities, because maybe this government is trying to buy itself some extra time. I'm not accusing anyone, but perhaps this long question of privilege is beneficial to both parties. Maybe they both prefer it this way. But is it essential to have this many hours of debate? One wonders.
Barry Springwater or Medante.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you to my member down the Y here for her great words on this. I have a quote I would like to mention here on the floor of the House of Commons that came up during committee under hearings under this horrific scandal that we're hearing about with the SDTC, and I'd like to read this specifically, and I will quote it. I think the current government is more interested in protecting themselves and protecting the situation from being a public nightmare. They would rather protect wrongdoers and financial mismanagement than have to deal with a situation like SDTC in the public sphere. I would like to ask my colleague down the way just a little bit, through you, of course, Mr. Speaker, what her thoughts on this, and if they understand why we are pushing so hard to have these documents made public.
The Honourable Member for Avignon, Lamitis, Matan, Matapédia. We do want to find the truth. It is legitimate to want to get to the bottom of things. In some sense, the Conservative Party is trying to shed light on the situation to ensure that we can all understand what occurred. That is legitimate. It is legitimate to want to get documents and information. That said, the Conservative Party might also want us to waste time here in the House rather than debating legislation before the House. So I struggle to understand the Conservative tactics at the moment. In fact, it makes me uncomfortable. The members for Longueuil-Saint-Hubert and Mille-Îles said similar things. That is, that we do need to get to the bottom of this, but do we need to jam up Parliament for hours and hours? Could we not just immediately send the matter to committee so that the committee can study it?
James Bay.
I was away for last week in Dublin at the European Security Council meeting.
Nobody even noticed.
And I find that we're again playing these games of the Conservatives, and there's so much.
We thought you were gone.
Dublin, and I believe my honourable colleague was there.
It was incredible. You notice how peaceful it was that Charlie wasn't here? Oh my goodness. Oil is good. Oil is great. Gas is awesome. It propels my truck to go forward.
And I come back here to see this sort of gamesmanship, but I'd like to ask my honourable colleague, while the
I'm saying that because this radical extremist tried to make it so you go in jail. You go to jail if you said these things about oil.
Abusive party that's interfering with democracy. I'd like to get my honourable colleague's thoughts, and if she wanted to share a song from Dublin, I'd be more than happy to hear it.
I don't know whether the honourable member wishes to sing, but she can reply to the question. The honourable member for Avignon.
Mike Carter with a 10. Thank you, Mike.
Mr. Speaker, I thank Mike.
Where has Jag Dog Meat Sing gone?
Last week,
Nothing from him about all this stuff. Dude, that's a crazy question that you just asked. Jagmeet has been missing in action
Impressive.
since they resumed Parliament
International
after
forums. We see
summertime.
incredibly important situations discussed, like the situation in Gaza. And
He's appeared less in the House than Justin Trudeau himself.
Conflicts all around the world.
Nobody
Then
knows.
We come home from international forums. We come back to this place, to the Parliament, and nothing has moved forward, moved ahead. So we wonder really how legitimate the Conservative tactic is. Resuming debate.
And I will have to cut the honourable member off.
Gregory with the 699, no message attached, but thank you nonetheless, Gregory.
Mary Springwater or Ramadante.
You, Mr. Speaker, that sounded a little harsh when you said you're going to have to cut me off. I felt like I was back home there. But that also being said, I'm probably going to disappoint a lot of my friends and family members who were ready to tune in around 5 o'clock tonight on the edge of their seats ready for this. But we've brought it a little bit forward to 1:45 in the afternoon, so I don't think they're probably as keen around the TV as I thought they'd be. But anyways, here we go. Mr. Speaker, today I am pleased to speak to an egregious violation of parliamentary privilege as a result of the Liberal government's refusal to and failure to comply with a Conservative motion that was duly passed by the House in June. The House of Commons, as a collective, and members of Parliament as individuals, have a number of rights and immunities that are necessary in order to perform their work. These rights and immunities are integral to the work of parliamentarians and are required in order to protect members of Parliament as well as the authority and dignity of the House of Commons. Individual rights of members include freedom of speech in the House of Commons and committees, freedom from arrest in civil actions, exemptions from jury duty, exemption from being subpoenaed to attend court as a witness, freedom from obstruction, interference, and intimidation. Collective rights of the House of Commons include the right to discipline those found in breach of privilege or in contempt, and to remove members for misconduct, to regulate its own internal affairs, including its debates, agenda, and facilities, to maintain the attendance and service of its members, and to institute inquiries and demand papers. These rights are extremely important, and when the collective or individual rights of members of Parliament are violated, it is so serious that all other work must cease. The reason we are here today is because the Speaker of the House of Commons found that the Liberal government violated the collective rights of members by refusing to produce documents that the House of Commons had ordered. As I mentioned, the House enjoys the absolute and unfettered power, or it should, to order the production of documents that is not limited by statute. These powers are rooted in the Constitution Act of 1867 and the Parliament of Canada Act. Since the Speaker agreed with Conservatives that our rights as parliamentarians have been breached, all business of the House has ceased. There will be no debates of government bills and no debates on private members' bills, because this issue is so important that it must take precedence over all other business, and because the Liberal government has refused to comply with the lawful order of the House of Commons. For the benefit of Canadians who may be watching at home, I will discuss how this motion came to be and why the House has been seized with this issue for months. Sustainable Development
He's explaining it right now, folks.
is a federally funded nonprofit fund that approves and distributes millions of dollars in funds annually to small and medium-sized businesses in the clean technology sector. This fund was established in 2001 by the Government of Canada to fund the development and demonstration of new technologies that promote sustainable development. This fund managed to run without controversy for many years. That is, until the Liberal government came to power and turned it into a green slush fund for their well-connected Liberal buddies. The trouble began when former Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry, Navdeep Bains, and his Liberal colleagues handpicked the board members and chair, who went on to spend almost $1 billion of taxpayer funds. This flagrant disregard for taxpayers' dollars and blatant corruption flew under the radar for many years. It was thanks to the works of Conservatives on various parliamentary committees, but especially the Industry and Technology Committee, that this scandal came to light and was fully investigated. In February of 2023, the allegations surrounding financial mismanagement and ethical lapses first came to light, in the form of a complaint from a group of employees at the fund. The Government of Canada responded by conducting an internal investigation which found several issues with how the fund was managed. Parliamentary hearings also began at the same time. The Auditor General of Canada first began to look into these allegations a short while later in November 2023 and issued a damning report earlier this year. She found that there were 186 times where conflicts of interest occurred, meaning the board of directors and the chair handpicked where funding was going on. Some of that funding went to their own companies. The Auditor General took only a sampling of the funding and found that 82% of that sample were in conflict of interest, totaling $330 million. The Auditor General also found that SDTC did not follow conflict of interest policies in 90 separate cases, spending nearly $76 million on projects connected to the Liberals' friends appointed to run the fund, spending $59 million on projects that were not allowed or have been awarded any money, and spent $12 million on projects that were both a conflict of interest and ineligible for funding. In one instance, the handpicked chair of the fund gave a shocking $217,000 to her own company.
Oh my God.
Canadians at home might be wondering how this could possibly happen. How could the Liberal-appointed board of the SDTC misappropriate such a large amount of tax dollars? How could the board possibly have so many conflicts? I will explain. Every single dollar that is dispersed by the billion-dollar Green Slush Fund has to be approved by the board of directors. The members of the board of directors would declare their conflicts when they happen to arise, and at the beginning of the meeting, those conflicts were declared. The trouble is that in many cases, a director would stay in the room, or in some cases, they would leave the room while members were voting to give funds to their own projects.
No.
Of course, a completely absurd way to run a fund, and led to these members willfully and purposely enriching themselves and the value of their companies. One egregious example of this scenario is when member of the board, Andre Lise Metho, who runs a venture capital firm called Cycle Capital, received $114 million in grants from the Green Slush Fund while she was sitting on the board. Her company's value tripled during her time on the board at SDTC because the receipt of these funds lent an untold amount of legitimacy to her company. Another shocking tidbit from this example is that Cycle Capital's in-house paid lobbyist was none other than the Liberal Minister of the Environment. He lobbied the PMO and the industry department 25 times while he was the paid lobbyist for Cycle Capital. Ms. Metho then went on after her time at SDTC to become a board member at the Canada Infrastructure Bank, where she gave a handsome gift of $170 million in infrastructure bank money to a company owned by the chair of SDTC, Annette Verschuren.
Wow.
We will turn to Ms. Verschuren's conflicts, which are second shocking example of the corruption, that took place under this Liberal government's watch. Annette Verschuren was appointed to be the chair of the Green Slush Fund by former Minister of Industry Navdeep Bains after he removed the previous chair, Jim Vasili, given his public criticism of the Liberal government's privacy legislation. Mr. Bains proposed Annette Verschuren, an entrepreneur who was receiving SDTC funding through one of her companies, as a replacement. The Minister, the Prime Minister's office, and the Privy Council office were warned of the risks associated with appointing a chair with so many conflict of interest, and were told that the fund had never had a chair with interest in companies receiving funding from SDTC. In 2019, Minister Bains proceeded with the appointment of Ms. Verschuren, despite repeated warnings expressed to his office. Ms. Verschuren sat in and moved 2 motions to funnel $38.5 million out the door in COVID relief payments. These are payments that went out the door in contravention of the contribution agreements with the SDTC had with ISED or Industry Canada. Not only did $38.5 million inappropriately go out the door in these COVID relief payments, but $220,000 was funneled into her own company.
Holy smokes,
She
man.
was the CEO, founder, majority shareholder, and sole director. She moved a motion and voted on sending $220,000 to her own company. Just recently, Ms. Verschuren was found guilty of breaking ethics laws by the Ethics Commissioner. In his report, the Ethics Commissioner stated that Ms. Verschuren, quote, improperly furthered the interest of the beneficiaries of SDTC funding to companies associated with those accelerators. These are just two examples of the shocking revelations that were uncovered by the Auditor General, the Ethics Commissioner, and my Conservative colleagues. 9 directors, according to the Auditor General, accounted for the 186 conflicts. I will remind members of this House that this fund had run well, by all accounts, until the Liberal government came into power and turned it into a slush fund. In fact, one of the whistleblowers who worked at the owned company stated, and I will quote, "The true failure of this situation stands at the feet of our current government, whose decision to protect wrongdoers and cover up their findings over the last 12 months is a serious indictment of how our democratic systems..."
So, for example, if I test it right now,
Listen, I want to remind people that are joining us online to make sure that their microphones are in the mute position.
For crying out loud.
If they are having challenges, well, that's
Oh, my goodness.
problems. Well, the honourable member wants to...
Idiot liberals are probably joining with their mics on.
For Barrie of Springwater, Oramadan.
Back from the top, restart it.
Thank you, Speaker, and I really appreciate everybody wanting to hear me from the top there. That means it must be really riveting and they're enjoying my words. I appreciate that. And to the Speaker, I would have loved the opportunity to start from the top, but I will continue on from my quote, which was, again, it's a great quote, everyone. This was right from
That's
the
pretty funny.
whistleblower who worked there. Quote, "The true failure of the situation stands at the feet of our current government." I'm sure they wanted to hear that a second time. "Whose decision to protect wrongdoers and cover up their findings over the last 12 months is a serious indictment of how our democratic systems and institutions are being corrupted by political interference. It should never have taken 2 years for the issues to reach this point. What should have been a straightforward process turned into a bureaucratic nightmare that allowed SDTC to continue wasting millions of dollars and abusing countless employees over the last year." Another quote from the same committee that your Mr. Speaker was, and I'd like to quote this. "I think the current government is more interested in protecting themselves and protecting the situation from being a public nightmare. They would rather protect wrongdoers and financial mismanagement than have to deal with a situation like SDTC in the public sphere." And I heard someone asking who said that. That was an employee who used to work at SDTC who was at committee and said that under committee. They're quoted. So that's right out of the committee meeting. I'm sorry, it gives me 5 more seconds. I've got lots more to go, Mr. Speaker. I'm looking forward to continuing after QP.
Well, the honourable member will have the opportunity to use the rest of his speech. I think there'll be about 8 minutes remaining in his time. Statements by members. Déclaration de député. The honourable member for Vancouver Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have a problem. 30 years ago, polio was eradicated in the Americas. 2 generations of children were made safe from the death and disability that polio wrought. Now we must re-wage this battle. We're seeing long eradicated diseases make a comeback, in most part due to the disinformation that fuels anti-vax communities.
All right.
As a physician, I watch in despair as conditions...
Jim Brown with the 5. This terrorist government must go. Agreed. Agreed, Jim. Thank you for that. Georgina with the 5. For more stickers, thumbs up.
To invest in the polio worldwide.
Thank you, Georgina. I appreciate that. You could have used that money to purchase a sticker, but thank you.
It would become a pandemic. Colleagues,
Deborah with the $6.99. No message attached, nonetheless. Thank you, Deborah. I appreciate that. Matthew with the 10. I can't be the only one who wants this this toucher to end.
170 million children is a
Massive lack of accountability in taxing. I feel like we were being governed by kindergarten children.
For York Simcoe. Mr. Speaker, it's been 1 year since my conservative bill C-280 passed
you're not wrong.
the House of Commons. This important bill will ensure that Canada's fresh fruit and vegetable growers are
Joe Uber with the 10. Time to spank Justin Trudeau all the way to the brink.
But this Prime Minister's hand-picked senators have held this bill for months. And now some are actively looking to defeat it. In committee, one senator even told produce farmers, tough luck, the whole system is crooked, but life's not fair, and you're just going to have to deal with it. Talk about out of touch, Mr. Speaker. Bill C-280 supports farmers, protects our food security, promotes cross-border trade, and practically every MP voted for it. But Liberal-appointed senators want to ignore the will of the House and side with big banks instead. They need to get their act together, stand with common-sense Conservatives in support of C-280 and our farmers, and bring it home.
There you go.
From Kitchener.
Good enthusiasm today.
Mr. Speaker, as the leaves turn to their brilliant autumn hues, it reminds us that Kitchener-Waterloo Oktoberfest is here once again. I'm thrilled to invite everyone to the 56th annual celebration.
Hey, if you guys haven't yet already, I'd recommend, or I'd encourage, or I'd ask politely that you guys take this time now to smash the like button on the stream and subscribe if you haven't yet already. It does really help push out the streams and grow the channel.
Cuisine served by local clubs and restaurants to vibrant cultural events each day. There's something for everyone. Our Thanksgiving Day Parade will be broadcast nationwide. And throughout the festival, there'll be family fun for all ages, including activities for children and a free family breakfast. We also host a community food drive. So whether you're dancing a polka, enjoying a traditional meal, or participating in family fun, this festival brings us together in camaraderie, culture, and celebration. So thanks to the organizers and volunteers whose dedication keep the spirit of Oktoberfest alive and thriving. Enjoy Oktoberfest. Prost.
The Honourable Member for Abitibi Témiscamingue. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to mark the creation of a very special ribbon in my region, the Nathan Ribbon. At the end of August 2024, Nathan Macamo, a young teenager, was hit by a car while crossing the road after getting off a school bus. As the father of two teenagers, my thoughts are with the family affected by this tragedy. And
you touched that like button gently.
Yellow and black.
I mean, that works too.
Buses that travel our roads.
All right, everybody, touch the like button gently.
Tool created by Autobus Mau,
that also
a company
works.
in my region. I salute the leadership of Pierre and Nicolas Mau. Every day, these big yellow and black buses are on our roads with the most precious assets, our children. Every day, school bus drivers witness actions that can endanger the lives of our children. This ribbon is a way of honoring Nathan's memory, and I ask you all to obtain one. It's a way to remind everyone of our responsibility, and do not forget that when the lights are flashing, we stop. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Humber River, Black Creek.
It is my great pleasure to acknowledge the incredible work of the Global Action Network for Sickle Cell and Other Inherited Blood Disorders. This organization is truly making a difference for those affected by serious blood disorders. The challenges posed by inherited conditions like sickle cell disease, thalassemia,
get yourself situated, folks. This is going to be good. They're about to start QP here in a few minutes.
Yet the commitment of this network to raise awareness, advocate for timely diagnosis, and promote comprehensive treatments is inspiring. Global Action Network for Sickle Cell and Other Inherited Blood Disorders will be holding a reception tomorrow evening. I would like to invite all of my honourable colleagues to meet with professionals, advocates, and individuals living with inherited blood disorders tomorrow evening in the Valor Building. Our support to this cause is invaluable. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Member from Kildone and St. Paul.
1 year ago today, Jews experienced the worst attack since the Holocaust. Innocent Jews were barbarically slaughtered. Women's bodies were broken from vicious rape. Children tortured in front of their parents. People burned alive and mutilated. 1,200 Jewish lives were horrifically ended that day. And 101 hostages continue to be held by Hamas terrorists responsible for this massacre. And since then, unbelievably, right here in Canada, Jews have experienced relentless anti-Semitism, targeting Jewish businesses, schools, retirement homes, and synagogues. It is a national failure that Jews no longer feel safe in this country. And yet, Jewish people continue to fight. Their resolve is stronger than ever. Conservatives stand with them and with the State of Israel. We condemn the anti-Zionist hatred and the spineless Canadian leaders who have allowed it to take root here at home. Today, we pray for Israel and for the victory of Western democratic values. Am Israel High.
Wow. I'm surprised it wasn't Melissa Lantsman delivering that, but nonetheless, that was good. 1 year.
Member from Toronto Danforth.
Today marks one
Jim with the $2. Thank you. No message attached, but thank you nonetheless.
Israel that took the lives
and Joe with a 20. I am supposed to be studying for my LSAT, yet here I am watching House of Canada. Everybody like and subscribe.
Over 100 remain there.
You guys could just put like and subscribe down in the comments. You don't have to pay money to say that. But nonetheless, thank you for the support, Joe.
The killing, the sexual violence.
And yes, don't forget to like and subscribe.
October 7th marks the largest atrocity on the Jewish people since the Holocaust. It broke our hearts. But as Leonard Cohen said, there's a crack in everything, and that's how the light gets in. And today, we must come together to find and form that light. Hirsch's mother said that in a competition of pain, there are no winners. And there's been so much pain, and there have been no winners. But today, we can hold space to mourn those who were killed on October 7th. And we pray and we work for peace. We pray and we work for the release of the hostages. Let that be our light.
Also, yeah, good luck on your LSATs, Joe. Probably wouldn't hurt to study at some point.
The honourable member from Vaughan Woodbridge.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize the important work that leading arthritis organizations are doing across Canada. This week they are on Parliament Hill raising awareness about the challenges faced by more than 6 million Canadians living with arthritis. They embody the spirit of advocacy that is so vital in the fight against this pervasive disease. Often misunderstood as an ailment of older people, half of the people affected by arthritis are under 65, including around 25,000 children. Arthritis is the most common chronic disease in Canada. It is estimated to rise to 9 million Canadians, or 1 in 4, by 2040. The debilitating pain limits mobility, hampers productivity, and sadly can lead to isolation and impact on mental health. Mr. Speaker, there is no cure to arthritis, but together we can make a difference and help improve the lives of those suffering from it by working towards building a healthier future for all Canadians, which includes reducing wait times for diagnosis and treatment and improving access to care. To Arthritis Society Canada and all the partners, thank you for your advocacy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Portneuf, Jacques Cartier. Mr. Speaker, the Bloc has issued an ultimatum for October 29th in an attempt to intimidate its friend, the Liberal Prime Minister. On October 30th, the day before Halloween, nothing will change. The government will remain in place. It's all the makeup and illusions we've come to expect from the Bloc. The Bloc has abandoned Quebec. It has voted more than 180 times to keep the most expensive government in power. A government that trampled Quebec's jurisdiction. A government that broke immigration. The Bloc voted for $500 billion in inflationary spending, which added 100,000 public servants and doubled the federal debt. And that's why, amongst other things, it's called the Bloc Liberal Coalition. It claims to defend Quebecers, but it can't even defend the regions that will suffer from the Caribou Decree. The Bloc is a terrible negotiator. It got nothing for its vote that keeps the Liberals in power. Quebec friends, a word of advice. Beware of the Bloc Québécois.
Wow.
Member from Waterloo.
In Canada, October...
I just got word that Justin Trudeau is going to be in the House. At least he was walking towards the House of Commons.
Today I rise to thank
not too long ago.
Publishers, writers...
So this is going to be pretty wild, folks. Buckle up.
And representatives of Bolivia, Chile, Colombia, Ecuador, Spain.
Bunny LeBlanc, thanks for the 5. Colin election.
Republic, and Europe.
We might see something crazy today. We might see
Liberal
prorogation.
Language is essential to
Who knows?
in this book fair.
Mark, welcome to the membership. Thank you.
Promotion of Spanish
And Doug,
literature.
thanks for the $6.99 super sticker.
Importance of Hispanic culture in Canada. I would especially like to applaud Sylvia Alfaro, Ramon Sepulveda, and Gabriela Lopez.
All other
team, including
financial donations and memberships,
honor to host a
I will read them off and acknowledge them after question period, folks. I'm not going to interrupt the main event, but thank you nonetheless.
in emerging cultural communities. Diversity is Canada's strength, and I hope even more people join us next year. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Barrie Springwater, Oro Medante.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 years, this NDP Liberal government is not worth the cost, crime, or corruption. We know that this Liberal government took a legitimate federal foundation called Sustainable Development Technology Canada and turned it into a green slush fund.
Chris Harding for the 5. Been watching you for years. Thanks for the informative videos. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Guys, you don't have to pay money to say that. That's my job. I'm supposed to say that. I don't know why that angers me. It doesn't anger me, but thank you nonetheless.
At a time when Canadians can't afford to eat,
awesome community.
eat and house themselves. Conservatives passed a motion ordering the Liberal government to assist.
Little new for the 2. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Handing over all documents related
Joe Uber with the 10 gifted subs. Thank you, Joe. Go study for your LSATs after question.
Parliament to a halt. Canadians do not have confidence in this Prime Minister, who has previously been found guilty of breaking ethics laws twice. It is time to axe the tax, cut the corporate corruption, and let Canadians vote in a carbon tax election.
Yeah. But we might see something crazy today. Prorogation, man.
Calgary, Nose Hill.
1 year ago today, Hamas committed the greatest massacre of the Jewish people since the Holocaust.
Yeah.
The attack should have woken all of us up to the fact that the terror regime in Tehran and their proxy groups seek the destruction not only of the Jewish people, but of democratic values around the world. These groups care nothing for the lives of the people subjugated under their rule.
C2 in the chat, or C squared.
To death and misery.
We're outside of the House of Commons. Thank you.
In Iran and its proxy terror groups are the foe today for which failing hands threw us the torch to guard against.
You're watching the stream outside of House of Commons?
Canada
It's Inception. Thank you.
Perpetuate. We must fight for it every day. That means rejecting feckless leaders who placate lawless mobs within Canada's streets. And it means defending the right of Israel, a democratic nation, to protect itself from the same terror groups that also seek death to our Canadian way of life. Remember, colleagues, that peace never comes through appeasement. It only comes through strength. Am Israel High.
Pierre's standing.
The honourable member for...
Pierre's ready. Pierre's ready. He's standing up.
The Minister of Housing and I had the great pleasure of inaugurating the new NATO Diana Centre.
I used to have a haircut like that. My mom would put a bowl over my head and just cut around.
The centre will help develop dual-use technologies that address security and defence challenges.
Intrusive thought. I didn't mean to say that.
Places Canada at the centre of NATO's efforts to maintain its technological lead and preserve...
I gotta be like Greg Fergus and start muting my own mic.
Investment of over $26 million is also a demonstration of Canada's dedication to the NATO alliance and to our defence. I'd like to thank Major General Pay Payton, who will be the NATO Diana Deputy Military Director for North America. I'd like to thank all of my caucus colleagues, the Liberal Atlantic Caucus colleagues, who have worked tirelessly to make this happen, particularly those in Nova Scotia who worked tirelessly to make this project a reality in Halifax. Thank you. The honourable member for Algoma.
All right, we still got time. I can
Healthcare workers,
shotgun read these.
and family members.
Earners of the 5. We're Canadians. We deserve better defense from the government and also personal defense. Yes, we do.
Care home. Built in 1972,
Thank you for that.
the current elders
with a 2. I hope Pierre is real. Subscribe now. Thank you, Mom.
have already
Thank
been
you.
designed for an expanded facility, but they need
Dan Fitz with a 2. No, you are. I hope you're talking about something positive. Thank you, Dan.
close to family and friends as The license is set to expire June 2020.
Ven Star with the 5. Great channel. Found it last week, and I'm hooked. Like and subscribe. Keeping Canes well informed, one at a time. Thank you, Ven. I appreciate it. Lola with the 2. Prorog is like a kid given the silent treatment. Yes, it is.
In the community. Failure
For crying out loud, Joe with the 10. Cha-cha-cha, Hong Kong.
for residential school survivors
Thank you.
and reduce their ability to pass on their historical knowledge and teachings. Time is of the essence. Indigenous Services Canada and the Finance Minister must ensure the $20 million requested is advanced for this new elders' home. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Here we go. Then I have...
Louis-sur-Loire. Today, October 7th, marks the end of a year.
Couple more sips of coffee and I'll be good.
A year since Hamas terrorists massacred over 1,200 people in Israel. A year since Hamas took nearly 250 hostages, including dozens of presumed alive but still missing. A year since the deadliest day for Jews since the Holocaust. On October 7th, Hamas perpetrated acts of unprecedented barbarity, plunging the Middle East into a spiral
C-squared out on Parliament Hill saying we've been telling the MPs not to prorogue the government and to call an election.
This spiral of violence.
That's good.
But we have no right to forget the victims of October 7th. Innocent men, women,
Liberal
and
interference.
children. We must not forget the hostages and their families who can no longer rest. On behalf of the Bloc Québécois, I reiterate my solidarity with the entire Jewish community who deserves to live through this tragic commemoration in dignity and safety.
The honourable member from Thornhill.
Oh my God.
The Jewish people were savagely
Go ahead,
attacked
talk,
in the
Melissa.
deadliest act of sadistic barbarism since the Holocaust. Over 1,200 souls were raped, murdered, and taken hostage by a radical death cult backed by the clerical regime in Tehran, 7 Canadians among them. 101 remain in the grips of terrorists, hidden in the tunnels of hell. 1 year ago, the glory of living a peaceful and safe existence in this country as a Jew ended. They have placated the mob of woke radicals and the anti-Zionist Jew haters that reign free in our streets and reward terror. We used to be a country that was clear and unequivocal about eradicating anti-Semitism here and destroying terrorists without conditions everywhere. For those who remain captive, those waiting for their loved ones to come home, for those who never made it back, we remember you. And for those horrified at the state of our country, we will fight to restore the Canada you know and love, even when they won't.
Well said. Why aren't the Liberals standing and clapping? Like, come on.
From Mississauga, Aaron Mills.
Mr. Speaker, 1 year ago, over 1,000 Israelis were killed in a terror attack by Hamas. Since then, Netanyahu's regime has killed tens of thousands of Palestinians and victimized hundreds of thousands in the region. As long as this continues, so too does the harm in our Canadian communities. Over the past year, our local synagogue has had to ask police for support during Shabbat and this past weekend during Rosh Hashanah. Palestinian Canadians who have lost entire generations of family members are afraid to grieve openly and continue to be targeted for their heritage. This is unacceptable. No matter your identity, you deserve to feel safe and to be able to grieve in our country. This is not a political issue, this is a humanity issue. And if members in this House continue to make this tragic loss a partisan issue, we risk losing a part of our own humanity. Today is the horrific anniversary for Jewish and Palestinian Canadians alike. Today is a day of grief, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, there you go. They got up and clapped. Here we go.
Oral questions.
Questions on. Honorable leader. It should be next Prime Minister Pierre Poilievre.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we know that this Prime Minister isn't worth the cost, the crime, or the corruption. The Liberals have paralyzed this Parliament by refusing to respect your judgment. to produce the documents and give them to the RCMP. This is a $400 million scandal. Liberal-appointed executives gave money to their own businesses. 186 conflicts of interest, according to the Auditor General. Will the Liberals respect your judgment and give the evidence to the RCMP so we can get back to work? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, what the Leader of the Opposition is saying is not true. This matter has been referred to the committee for further study. Will the Conservatives decide to follow that example?
The NDP Liberals are not worth the cost, the crime, or the corruption. Prime Minister has ground the work of Parliament to a halt by refusing to respect your ruling. The government must hand over evidence to the police concerning the $400 million spending scandal that saw Liberal appointees give millions of dollars to their own companies. Wow. The Auditor General says there's 186 conflicts of interest in this scandal.
Oh,
Prime Minister, end the cover-up, respect your ruling, give the police the information so that we can have accountability and get back to work.
Yep.
The Honourable Leader of the
Work for Canadians.
In the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, it's demonstrably false what the Leader of the Opposition is saying, because your ruling was to send this matter to the House and Procedure Affairs Committee for more study. And so, in fact, it is only the Conservatives that are now obstructing their own obstruction, because they don't want this to go to committee, because it would demonstrate that they are trying to upend charter rights and override police independence. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Nope.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Parliament can get back to work this minute if the government will just hand over the evidence to the police about this $400 million Liberal spending scandal. I found it interesting. They say everybody's going to lose their charter rights if the police get evidence into this $400 million Liberal spending scandal. Right. No, what will happen is that the Liberal nominees and appointees who engaged in 186 conflicts of interest to stuff their own pockets will be held criminally accountable, and Canadians might get their money back. Why won't they hand over the evidence, respect your ruling, so we can get back to work around here?
There you go. That's working for Canadians.
In the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, what's interesting about this is that there's actually proof that the Leader of the Opposition is saying is false, because in your ruling you said this matter needs to go to the House and Procedures Affairs Committee for further study, because this is unprecedented in what the Conservatives are putting forward, because, as the RCMP mentioned, it would upend charter rights and it would blur the lines between judicial and legislative independence. Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives can follow your ruling and we can all go back to work, which is what exactly the Canadians want us to do. Thank you.
Yes,
we want you to release those documents.
Members for being very patient and not taking the microphone. I'm going to remind the Honourable Member from South Shore St. Margaret's to do the same. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
A year ago today, a sadistic and genocidal death cult, Hamas, carried out the biggest attack on Jews since the Holocaust, and has 100 more hostages. Bring them home. Here at home, though, our Jewish friends and neighbors have been doubly victimized as anti-Semitic mobs take to the streets shouting, "From Palestine to Lebanon, Israel will soon be gone. There's only one solution: intifada, revolution." Will the government clearly and unequivocally condemn these genocidal chants from hateful mobs on our streets?
Yep. It's pretty crazy, man. Terrorist supporters in the streets of Canada.
Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, Judy Weinstein, Vivian Silver, Ben Mizrachi, Netta Epstein,
Oh my
Shir
goodness.
Georgi, Alexandre Luc, Idal Vital Kaploun, Tiferet Lapido. May their memories be a blessing. It was my honor to have met with their families here at home and in Israel. And on the anniversaries of Hamas' horrific attacks, my promise to their loved ones is the following. Year after year, Canadians will honor their memories, and to Jewish people, we stand with you. We won't relent until the last hostage returns home.
Literally did not answer his question, but okay.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
She does relent every single day, just like her leader. I asked a very simple question.
There it is.
Mobs have taken to the streets in front of Jewish homes, hospitals,
Seniors.
and businesses to shout anti-Semitic hate slogans. I quoted a number of them and invited the minister to rise to her feet and specifically condemn them, to stand with Jews against the anti-Semitism that has been allowed to proliferate on our streets. So once again, will she condemn these anti-Semitic chants?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Solicitor General.
Mr. Speaker, today is October 7th, an anniversary of a horrific attack on Jews. 1,200 people killed, over 200 people taken hostage. Our solidarity is with Jews in Israel and with Jewish people in Canada and right around the world.
They just can't answer the question.
Against absolutely is the amount of hatred that we've seen in this country and countries around the world, where people will target Jewish Canadian schools, daycares, and synagogues for the acts that they have a problem with on another side of the world. We are better than that in this country. We need to stand up against that kind of hatred in support of Jewish people and in place of all people who defend their ability to worship how and whom they choose.
Wow. Can't answer the question. It's embarrassing.
Honourable member for La Prairie. Mr. Speaker, seniors came here to the Hill last week to ask for old age security to be increased by 10%. According to a poll, 79% of people agree with that. 79%. And elected officials voted unanimously for it. We just need the government to grant royal recommendation to C-319, but it doesn't want to because it says that that's not how things are done. We are bringing up seniors' living conditions. We're bringing up democracy. And meanwhile, the government keeps talking about procedure. When will they stop dragging their feet and grant royal recommendation? The Honourable Minister of Labour and Seniors. Mr. Speaker, I have visited with many seniors in my riding over the weekend. I have dialogued with them, and knowing my honourable colleague, I'm sure that he has been very clear with seniors. For example, the fact that he is opposed to lowering retirement age to 65, the Bloc Québécois voted against that. When we increased the guaranteed income supplement, the Bloc voted against, and when we brought in dental care for thousands of seniors in Quebec, the Bloc Québécois voted against that. The member for La Prairie. Mr. Speaker, seniors are mobilizing to increase their pensions. 79% of people agree. All parties voted for it at committee, and yet the Liberals just keep talking to us about procedural problems. And the same thing applies to the issue of supply management. Farmers want C-282. All of the parties voted for it, but it's stuck in the Senate, and once again the Liberals are refusing to do anything. In both cases, the Liberals are talking to us about procedural problems, but is the real problem that the Liberals just don't care?
Culture Niagara Food.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. My honourable colleague is well aware that it was our party that initiated the supply management program. It's our party that supported the supply management program through its history. It's a very successful program, and we supported 282, and we urge the other place to move on this legislation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Good job. L'honorable député de New Westminster.
The Honourable Member for New Westminster Burnaby. Mr. Speaker, the right to housing is critical, but the housing crisis has only gotten worse since the Liberals...
Like, where the hell is Jagmeet?
The Liberals and the Conservatives before them sold more than 1 million affordable housing units to rich developers so that they could get rich at the expense of families. The Liberals let rents double. Meanwhile, the Conservatives helped their real estate donors get rich. Both of these parties provoked the housing crisis. Why do they want families to pay the price for what they've done? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our colleague is right to oppose the Conservatives. When the Leader of the Opposition was Minister for Housing for the entire country, he only managed to build 6 affordable housing units. But my NDP colleague is also right to say that the Conservative leader is cynical. He's saying that helping seniors who live in low-income housing or co-ops would be encouraging a Soviet lifestyle.
The housing crisis in Indigenous communities continues to be a stain on this government's record. Over 300,000 Indigenous people continue to live in unsuitable housing. The Liberals promised to build homes for First Nations, Inuit, and Métis communities and broke it. To make matters worse, Indigenous people are still reeling from the Conservatives' cuts to housing until this day. Liberals break promises, Conservatives gut and cut, Indigenous people pay the price. When will this government finally act to build the homes Indigenous people desperately need?
Pierre never once said he's going to gut those programs.
Services. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our colleague is entirely right. That's why we have been building thousands and tens of thousands of homes for Indigenous Canadians and other Canadians in the last 9 years.
No, he has not.
Built on the record of the Conservative leader with 6 affordable apartments in his entire mandate, we would be a long way from what is needed for Indigenous Canadians in 2024. In addition to that, as I said,
he's talking like he just learned English.
Support seniors and Indigenous Canadians when they live in low-rent housing because he believes it encourages a sort of Soviet-style housing conditions.
Wow, that was brave.
L'honorable chef de l'opposition.
I gave the Foreign Affairs Minister 2 opportunities to condemn the increasingly common and terrifying anti-Semitic chants we hear in the streets. Israel will soon be gone. There is only one solution, Intifada revolution. Twice she refused to condemn those remarks. She continues to pander to Hamas supporters in the Liberal Party as part of her leadership campaign rather than doing her job. So I'll give her another chance. Will she publicly support Israel's right to retaliate against the tyrants of Tehran and the terrorists in Hezbollah and Hamas to protect itself? Yes or no?
Yeah.
If we don't do politics about...
Hold on. Hold on. The speaker didn't announce you. Nobody heard you.
I just want to encourage all members to ensure, consistent with rulings in the past, and I will come back to this near the end of the question period, but just to caution all members to please be judicious in their words. The Honourable Minister for Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, if there's a day where we don't do politics about people's lives being taken or people being killed, it's today.
Look at their fake enthusiasm. One person stood up.
Form of anti-Semitism, I hope, in this House. Any form of discrimination. And I really hope that my colleague in front will apologize.
Right on. You've got people friggin' waving Hezbollah and Hamas flags in the streets of Toronto and Ottawa. What the hell's the matter with you?
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
There was ever a day when we needed a government to stand up for what was right. This would be
today. Holy smokes.
Has sought to divide Canadians by saying one thing to one group and precisely the opposite to another group. And here in this House, remaining radio silent on condemning anti-Semitic chants and on supporting Israel's right to truly defend itself by retaliating against the terrorists and tyrants. Why won't she do the right thing and stand beside the Jewish people today?
Yeah. There you go, man.
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, 1 year ago in the Middle East, peace was broken by a violent terrorist attack by Hamas. On this side of the ocean, we deserve to do better in terms of the protest that we articulate. It needs to be peaceful. What that means is you don't go out on the streets and target a daycare. You don't go out on the streets and target a community center. You don't go out on the streets and target a synagogue. Our resolve to fight anti-Semitism is strong. It has been strong since this parliament started when we outlawed the willful promotion of anti-Semitism. It is even stronger now when we're advocating for more strict penalties, which that party opposes.
The
The honourable member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands.
Here we go.
Speaker, it was you who ruled that this NDP Liberal government obstructed a lawful order of this House by not turning over the evidence in the $400 million corruption scandal. It has this Parliament paralysed and unable to deal with the misery and chaos that's been created after 9 years of this NDP Liberal government. And taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and time is up for the cover-up of this latest corruption scandal. So will they simply provide the evidence to the police so that this House can get back to its work of holding them accountable?
The honourable leader of the government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, that member is again false in his statements, because what you clearly ruled was that this matter should be sent to committee for further study, because it is the first time in this Parliament's history that it is taking its extraordinary powers and abusing them in such an egregious way. The issue with which the honourable member is discussing has been dealt with by this government, but it's up to the Conservatives to stop obstructing their own obstruction so that we can all get back to the important work of governing for Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
Only a Liberal would get up in this place and say that the majority of members in this House who were democratically elected, exercising powers that are legally bestowed upon this Parliament, are somehow infringing upon this government's constitutional right to not be investigated by the RCMP for their own corruption. It's absolutely
she's got it backwards.
Over 186 conflicts of interest, $400 million lining the pockets of well-connected Liberal insiders, while Canadians are lined up at food banks in record numbers. So we want to know if this government's expecting the NDP to bail them out and stop us from holding them to account.
Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, let's be clear about two things. In terms of a criminal prosecution, the way it normally unfolds is the police seek a search warrant from a judge. The judge evaluates the Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
If you've got nothing to hide, why are you nervous?
That party cares not. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, we also have this fundamental premise. It's called police independence. We safeguard it in Canada. You know who doesn't safeguard it? Authoritarian regimes. I guess the leader of the opposition and his minions are sharing their blatant observation and favoritism towards authoritarian tactics in this House.
Randy jumps up. Yay! That's pretty funny.
L'honorable député.
The honourable member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, history will remember that this government is corrupt. The latest example, the Green Fund, which ultimately became a slush fund for this government's buddies. The Auditor General was scathing. The leaders of the fund gave money to their own companies 186 times. That is corruption that deserves a police investigation. My question is very clear. When will the Liberals comply with your ruling to give the documents to the police so they can do their work? The Honourable Minister of Innovation. Mr. Speaker, I have a great deal of respect for my colleague, for Louis Saint Laurent, but only the Conservatives could manage to filibuster their own motion. I've never seen anything like it. Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, this is coming from a government that used wartime powers to freeze bank accounts to 72-year-old Susie or Karen
Independent reports
that donated money to a legal protest in Canada and then took away their rights. These people are freaking crazy.
Council. We believe that we have taken the right measures to ensure good governance of that program. The Honourable Member. Mr. Speaker, I also respect the Minister, but the problem is that the AG herself said that the Minister did not do his work properly and was not paying enough attention to what was happening within the fund. And we know that people here at the table are saying that the RCMP does not have all the documents. The only way to ensure that the RCMP can properly do its work is to ensure that the Liberals actually provide all of the documents. When will the Minister finally stand up and do his duty? The Honourable Minister of Innovation. Mr. Speaker, again, I have a great deal of respect for my colleague, but there have been 4 independent reports. Not one, 4. 4 independent reports were produced. And the RCMP commissioner has said in an open letter that the RCMP had access to all the documents. So in the interest of Canadians and democracy, in the interests of our work here in the House, we are asking the Conservatives to stop filibustering their own motion and to work hard in the interest of all Canadians. The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquinongé. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to come back to C-282, a bill that protects supply management. We were wondering why two senators, Peter Beam and Peter Harder, were blocking the bill in the Senate. Well, now we know why. Because of Dimitri Soudas, former advisor to Stephen Harper. He said about the two senators that they are two former deputy ministers who tried many times to convince Stephen Harper to abandon the supply management program. I was there, he said. So these two Liberal-appointed senators are trying to topple something that was voted in this House. Is that acceptable for the Liberals?
Alimentaire.
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
L'honorable ministre Revenu National.
The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. I assure you that all Liberals
didn't she
support
quit?
Supply management, just like our
that's Pam.
Conservatives. Well, I can't say the same for them. We have had a conversation with the Senate. We are talking with senators, just like my colleague from the Bloc, but the Senate is independent. These senators are independent. They need to do their work, and we expect them to do their work diligently. The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquinongé. What's happening in the Senate is very serious. These two non-elected officials are attacking our farmers and also the very basis of our democracy. This is where we vote in legislation in this House. If Peter Beam and Peter Harder don't agree with this legislation and want different legislation, then they should have the courage to step down from the Senate and get elected. This is where democracy has its seat. Our people's representatives are here and they supported C-282. So will the government ensure that these two senators respect democracy? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Same question, same answer. My colleague gave a very clear answer. We support supply management.
What's that pin that he's wearing?
The Liberal Party.
It's Canadian flag on the left and something else on the right.
We have always been very consistent in our position, unlike some members in this House. We have defended supply management even when President Trump wanted to get rid of it and when the Conservatives were asking us to capitulate. Before giving the floor to the member for Berthier-Masquinongé, I would like to invite the members for Mirabel and Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier to ensure that they do not speak until they receive the floor from the Speaker. The Honourable Member. Well, Mr. Speaker, adopting C-282 will be critical for dairy, poultry, and egg producers. That's not according to me. That's what it says in an open letter from the milk, eggs, chicken, and turkey producers of Canada, which just shows that when the Bloc Québécois supports Quebec's interests, sometimes it's such a great idea that all of Canada wants the same thing. Quebec and Canadian farmers want the same thing. This is good for everyone. So will all of the parties ask the Senate to stop blocking this consensus and pass C-282? Thank you. The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I entirely agree with my colleague from the Bloc Québécois.
Rub-a-dub-dub, Justin's taking something in the tub.
To ensure that it continues. It's very important for land use in Canada. The bill is in the Senate at the moment, and we expect senators to deal with it diligently.
The Honourable Member from Kamloops, Thompson, Caribou.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 years, the NDP Liberals aren't worth the cost, crime, or corruption. You, Mr. Speaker, ruled that this NDP Liberal government must hand over documents relating to what the Auditor General found was a $400 million fraud with 186 conflicts of interest. This is at a time when Canadians are having trouble heating, eating, and housing themselves. When will this Liberal government end the cover-up and provide those documents to the RCMP as they should?
And then government can get back to work.
General.
I'm going to appeal to that member as a former Crown prosecutor. He knows something about the independence of our institutions. When the police take action, they do so without political direction or manipulation. The police make decisions. They then go to a court and ask for a search warrant. It is judicially authorized because it has charter protections. That's something that member used to be familiar with. I just wish he would educate some of his colleagues about the importance of these safeguards and why they exist in democracies.
The honourable member from Kamloops, Thompson, Caribou.
Mr. Speaker, listening to the Attorney General, you would almost think that the Liberals believe they have a charter right to line the pockets of Liberal insiders. This is at a time when Canadians are lining up at food banks, when people cannot afford their mortgages, they cannot find a house, and yet Liberals line pockets of Liberal insiders. This is so on brand for Liberals. It's like they're entitled to their entitlements. Mr. Speaker, when will this Liberal government end the entitlement for Liberal insiders, hand over the documents unredacted so that Canadians and police can know the truth?
The Honourable Minister.
We all want to see it.
And Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, there's a qualitative difference between providing documents for the purposes of Parliament and providing documents for the purposes of prosecution. The second you cross that line, you need to impose the protections that the Charter provides. That's what that document represents. Most Canadians get behind that document, save for my Conservative colleagues. The reason why the safeguards are important is because they protect things like privacy, your freedom from unreasonable search and seizure. Again, fundamental precepts that member knows full well because he used to practice in this area. I just wish he could educate his colleagues about why we need to safeguard important charter rights.
Colleagues. The honourable member from Carlton Trail, Eagle Creek.
Where'd Pierre go?
After 9 years of NDP Liberals, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, time is up. The Green Slush Fund is more proof that the NDP Liberals are not worth the cost, crime or corruption. They have violated a House order to cover up for their friends. This $400 million Liberal scandal has paralysed Parliament, making it impossible to address the Prime Minister's agenda of crime and chaos. Will the NDP Liberals end the cover-up, give proof to the police, so Parliament can get working for Canadians?
Yeah, the Liberals just have to comply.
For innovation.
That's all.
Mr. Speaker, talking about working for Canadians. Now Canadians at home, we're seeing conservative blocking conservative motion, Mr. Speaker. Can you imagine that? We live in a parallel world in this place. The Conservatives are blocking their own motion, Mr. Speaker. What we did and we promised to Canadians was to get to the bottom of this, Mr. Speaker. There'll be 4 independent reports, Mr. Speaker, including the Auditor General, including the Commissioner of the RCMP. We said he has all the documents, Mr. Speaker. Not only the board resigned, the CEO resigned, the integrity of the foundation has been transferred. Mr. Speaker, we uphold the highest standard in this House.
Colleagues. The honourable member from Victoria.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians expect their government to do more when it comes to the climate crisis, but the Liberals are so far deep in the pockets of Canada's worst polluters that they plan to label fossil fuels as sustainable. They are caving to the interests of big banks and big oil instead of protecting Canadians. Oil and gas profits are going up. Their emissions are going up, and they want to greenwash fossil fuels. Why are the Liberals helping them?
The Honourable Minister for the Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will quote a colleague from Rosemont La Petite Patrie. I quote, "This is why, as a New Democrat, as a progressive, as an environmentalist, we are in favor of putting a price on pollution. We support taxing carbon, which already happens in the majority of Canadian provinces. On this side of the House, Mr. Speaker, we're not caving to pressure and disinformation campaign by the Conservative Party of Canada. It's unfortunate that the NDP doesn't seem to be progressive anymore or environmentalist anymore."
The honourable member from Winnipeg Centre.
Mr. Speaker, nothing but excuses from these Liberals, including
abortion. They are failing to stand up to conservative premiers because they will not enforce the Canada Health
The radical NDP.
including Alberta's premier, who is leasing hospitals to Covenant House, which provides emergency contraceptives and abortion services. The Women's Health Coalition says this jeopardizes reproductive rights. Will the minister stand up to conservative premiers, enforce the Canada Health Act, and uphold abortion care as health care?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister of Health.
Abortion care is health care. Making sure that a woman has access to an abortion service is essential medicine, and we believe in this on this side of the House. We fight for it every day. But let me go a step further. It's also essential that every woman in this country gets access to the contraceptives they need to have control over their body. And if you're against abortion and you're against contraception and you're against sexual education, then I'm sorry, you're against women's freedom altogether. And on this side of the House, we're going to make sure every woman gets the sexual and reproductive tools and support that she needs to have true freedom, Mr. Speaker.
Always divisive. I gotta say, man, I can't wait for a conservative government.
Mr. Speaker, buying a home is one of the biggest decisions that a Canadian can make in their lifetime. Unfortunately, high mortgage costs can be barriers to many, particularly the younger generation seeking to purchase their first home. Our government has...
High mortgage costs are a barrier, so we've increased mortgages to 30 years.
...to a reality. Can the Minister of Finance explain to this House how the adjustments to the mortgage amortization period will enhance and improve access to homes for thousands of Canadians?
That's contradicting.
Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague from Kitchener South Hespeler for the question and for giving me the chance to talk about the important measures that we have recently announced to help young Canadians achieve their dream of home.
You will own nothing
We've announced
and be happy.
First-time home
right in front of our eyes.
Amortizations of 30 years and 30-year amortizations for all Canadians.
All professional analysts, financial analysts, say that this is a horrible idea.
Canadians
It perpetuates more debt.
get more homes built faster. That's good news for Canadians, Mr. Speaker.
It's so greasy.
The Honourable Member from St. Albert, Edmonton.
Mr. Speaker, the Conflict of Interest Act is clear. A minister shall not be involved in the operations of a business while in cabinet. Text messages indicate that someone named Randy at the Minister of Edmonton's Shady Company was involved in its business operations, including an alleged $500,000 fraud. No one from the company named Randy can be identified except the minister, and everyone knows why. Will the minister finally fess up and just admit he broke the law?
There you go. There you go. Let's put some W's. Let's put some W's in the chat. I don't think we've done that today.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We agree that as witnesses go to
She knows the other Randy.
share information that is asked for them by the committee. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very short answers today by Karina.
Albert, Edmonton.
Well, the minister seems to be in hiding. The fact is that it is no coincidence that after months of inquiry, there is no other Randy that can be...
I love how Michael Cooper uses his hands. It's like he just learned how to use them.
Only Randy ever connected to the Shady Company
To talk, it's pretty funny.
minister. So again, will the minister stand in his place, fess up, admit he broke the law, and better yet, resign?
Hear, hear. Hear, hear.
Wow, I love it when the Conservatives put pressure on the Liberals to resign during question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I have said, if a witness is called before committee, they are expected to provide the information asked of them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
We don't have the other Randy. You guys have hidden them.
Sturgeon River, Parkland.
Mr. Speaker, who's Randy? It's a question that has gripped the nation, and we have yet to receive a truthful answer. Text messages reveal that the Minister of Employment's fraud-ridden business partner was working with Randy to shake down a medical supply company. The texts show that Randy was in Vancouver the same day as the Minister of Employment was there attending a cabinet retreat. The minister denied speaking with his partner. He claimed he didn't even have his phone, but now he admits that he did text and call his partner. So will the minister stand up and admit that he's been Randy all along?
Oh! Put some W's down for our boy Lloyd.
Colleagues,
Randy's awfully quiet.
The government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we have stated all along, that if a witness is called to committee and asked to provide information, they need to provide that information to you. Thank you.
That's right.
The honourable member from Sturgeon River.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Employment denied being Randy. He claimed he had no business dealing with his fraud-ridden business partner. He said he never even spoke to him in Vancouver while he was at the cabinet retreat. He said it was impossible. But after handing over his phone to the ethics commissioner, he finally admitted that he did text and call his business partner while at the cabinet retreat in Vancouver. The minister concealed the truth from Parliament for months, and only after getting caught did he admit his actions. Now the Speaker has even found his business partner in contempt of Parliament. The minister has had all summer to reveal the real Randy. Will he stand up and reveal himself today?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I have said and reiterate, that as a witness is called to committee and if they are asked to provide information to that committee, we expect they provide that information. Thank you,
That's
Mr.
right.
Speaker.
Very good.
That's right, says Freeland. That's right.
The Honourable Member for Mirabel. Mr. Speaker, whistleblowers who have courage to report wrongdoing in the federal government have to wait 3 years, not for an investigation to be concluded, but for one to even be started. Imagine just how reluctant this makes people to blow the whistle. And imagine how this affects the public's confidence at a time when the federal government is knee-deep in scandals like ArriveCan and SDTC. The Public Sector Integrity Commissioner is asking for the resources that she needs to process whistleblowing in a timely manner. Will the government immediately give the Commissioner these resources?
The Honourable President.
The Honourable President of the Treasury Board. Mr. Speaker, my office is working with the Commissioner's office to address funding concerns and resource concerns. Protecting whistleblowers is absolutely a priority, a top priority for our government. We have brought about many improvements to the process. So, Mr. Speaker, whistleblowers play a critical role in our democracy, and we are here to support them. The Honourable Member for Mirabel. Mr. Speaker, consider this. While the federal government is embroiled in various scandals, there are 161 whistleblower complaints that have yet to be processed. 161 complaints related either to wrongdoing or to reprisals against whistleblowers. The government must increase the Commissioner's budget as per her request. But the government must also ensure that all whistleblowers are protected, which is a reminder that Bill C-290, which passed unanimously in this House, has not yet made it through the Senate. Will the government ensure that the Commissioner has not only the budget that she needs, but also the necessary legal framework to do her job? The Honourable President of the Treasury Board. Mr. Speaker, first of all, as I said, my office is working with the Integrity Commissioner's office. We are working together to address these issues. We supported the bill that my colleague just mentioned. I hope that all senators will also support the bill. There is an external working group as well, which is studying revisions to the Whistleblower Protection Act, and we support whistleblowers.
Hastings, Lennox, and Addington.
There we go.
After 9 years of NDP Liberals, taxes are up, crime is up, cost is up, time is up, Mr. Speaker. The NDP Liberal carbon tax is driving up the cost of food, adding to an already terrible food insecurity crisis. It has gotten so bad, doctors are being told to be on the lookout for scurvy. That's right, scurvy. Not only are many Canadians grasping at their grocery bills in advance of Thanksgiving dinner, our medical professionals are concerned about the return of a centuries-old disease. Mr. Speaker, how is this Prime Minister so stubbornly convinced on his carbon tax, yet so afraid to call an election?
Minister of Health.
Well, I'll tell you, Mr. Speaker, what won't help somebody facing food insecurity in this country that's caused by a global crisis and rising food costs, it's cutting the rebate check. That's what the Conservatives would do. I talked to an individual, Bob, today. He's a senior who, with the Canadian Dental Care Plan, just saved $3,000 on essential care that he needed, talking to me about what that meant for his family and their ability to afford food. That would be cancelled by the Conservatives. All the Conservatives have are slogans, and we saw what that did. Fake lakes, gazebos, rubber checks, because they're going to go from slogans to try to win an election to slogans to explain why they're not doing anything for anybody. We're not going to allow that to happen.
The honourable member from Hastings, Lennox and Addington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. While sunny days are over, everyone should be concerned when leading medical publications are raising the alarm bells about scurvy in Canada in 2024. This disease was an issue 400 years ago. The cost of the carbon tax on food pricing is real. Limited access to adequate food caused by this increase is real. And lastly, the negative effects on the health of Canadians is real. Mr. Speaker, will the government axe the tax to lower the cost of food so that Canadians can once and again enjoy an affordable family Thanksgiving dinner?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
I mean, yeah, that is right around the corner.
Decades of being gone. Tuberculosis, measles, misinformation that is being spread around things like vaccines and about public health is doing insane damage to people. And I'll tell you, if you care about food insecurity in this world, then you should be supporting a school food program. If you care about
people can't even afford vitamin C.
Helping families lift
oranges are $2 a piece
with nothing behind them. Mr. Speaker, we face difficult times
because of these
people. In this world right now. This requires serious and real conversations. That's what we're centered on. That's what we think about. That's the solutions that we.
Vitamin deficiency because of the Liberals. They're slowly killing us.
The honourable member for Beauce. Mr. Speaker, everything is more expensive thanks to the Bloc Liberal coalition. The price of housing, the price of gas, but most of all, the price of food, which has shot up 22% since 2021. The food banks in my riding of Beauce barely have enough food to feed families in the region. But the Bloc Québécois continues to support this government, which has impoverished Quebecers. Families are really struggling. They need help as soon as possible. When will this government listen to Canadians and call an election? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have great respect for my colleague. My colleague is talking about Canadians and Quebecers who are struggling, but the Conservative leader's solution would be to penalize them, to harm them by cutting benefits that they need. Even for people in the colleague's riding, they would also cut the school food program, which would help children in his riding who arrive at school in the morning with empty stomachs. Because according to the Conservative leader, feeding school children is just bureaucracy. The Honourable Member for Madawaska, Restigouche. Mr. Speaker, in all of my conversations with students, scientists, researchers, one thing is very clear. The solutions to many of the world's problems can be found through science and research. From the Arctic to climate change to food science and beyond, can the Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry inform this House of the work our government is doing to support scientists? The Honourable Minister of Innovation. Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank my colleague for his great work. Indeed, when we invest in science and research, everyone wins, Mr. Speaker. That's why earlier this year in the budget, we announced an investment of $800 million through the Strategic Science Fund for 24 Canadian organizations working to solve some of the world's most significant challenges. And more recently, and everyone should be thrilled about this, Canada signed an agreement with the European Union's Horizon Europe program. This means that our researchers, scientists, and students will collaborate with their counterparts in Europe. Let's be ambitious, let's make this a priority, and let's make Canada a true leader in research and science.
Kent in Middlesex.
Speaker, after 9 years of NDP Liberals, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and time is up. And you know what else is up? The number of kids needing to use a food bank. The London Food Bank is already helping over 16,000 people every month, and more post-secondary students are going hungry.
Thanksgiving is this weekend and many families will be going without. Why? Because the cost of the carbon tax is making food too expensive. So if this Prime Minister is so convinced on his carbon tax, why won't he call a carbon tax election?
The Honourable Minister for Families, Social Development.
Mr. Speaker, we all suffer when some of our fellow Canadians are suffering. And we've made some historic investments, Mr. Speaker, including in 2016 when we brought in the Canada Child Benefit, which is providing support to over 4.3 million families each and every month, Mr. Speaker, an allowance that goes in their bank account every month to help with those basics, Mr. Speaker. This is how we are fighting for and supporting Canadian families, Mr. Speaker.
Bravo. The honourable member from Lambton, Kent, Middlesex.
Mr. Speaker, of course the Laurentian elites wouldn't understand. They don't know what it's like to be a parent living paycheck to paycheck, trying to feed their families. Constant NDP Liberal tax hikes and inflationary spending means that 1 million Ontarians had to use a food bank last year because they couldn't afford to buy food. In Middlesex, London, that means that 23,000 kids are going hungry. What parents really want is to give their kids a good Thanksgiving. So will the Prime Minister give Canadians what they want and call a carbon tax election?
There you go.
The Honourable Minister for Families, Children and Social Development.
Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we're focused on fighting for Canadian families. What does that mean, Mr. Speaker? That means making $1 billion commitment to families and children across this country to bring forward a school food program, Mr. Speaker, that will feed over 400,000 children each and every year. We've already seen progress with Newfoundland and Labrador on board and putting this forward in their schools. I look forward to more provinces and territories signing on so we can ensure kids have food at school.
The Honourable Member for Montmagny, Lillet, Kamouraska, Rivière-du-Loup. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After 9 years of this Liberal government, young Canadians and Quebecers are suffering. The sky-high cost of living is driving people to despair all over the country. 1.3 million Quebecers are experiencing food insecurity. And they're struggling to find a job, too. In a country like Canada, that's a disgrace. Quebecers have had enough of this centralizing, inflationary Liberal government, but the Bloc Québécois is still insisting on keeping them in power. It's unbelievable. Young people need jobs and housing. Can the Bloc Québécois give young Quebecers a break and stop supporting this Liberal Prime Minister who is ruthlessly impoverishing them? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ruthless? You know what's ruthless? Conservative policy toward Quebec's families and young Quebecers. He should bring his party leader with him. He says it's bureaucratic to help people to give food to children at schools, children who arrive in the morning with empty bellies. In fact, what about in the members' riding? We need an explanation about why it's bureaucratic to help hungry children.
Member from St. John's East.
In 2012, the Conservative Prime Minister traveled to the World Economic Forum in Davos to announce their plan to raise the retirement age to 67. Their plan, supported by the Leader of the Opposition, would have taken away OAS from 1 million Canadian seniors who turn 65 this year. Can the Minister of Seniors share how the government has defended Canadians' right to retire at 65 and what further supports for seniors is at risk of Conservative cuts?
The Honourable Minister for Labour and Seniors.
Mr. Speaker, thanks to my colleague, the chair of our Seniors Caucus. Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives' World Economic Forum agenda tried to turn Canadians' 2 best years of retirement into their 2 worst years of work by raising the retirement age to 67.
Shameful.
We reversed it.
That's right.
Their World Economic Forum wish list would cut a $1,000 increase to the GIS that helps nearly 1 million seniors. It would cut rent relief for vulnerable seniors and would kick 2.5 million seniors off the Canadian dental care plan. The World Economic Forum agenda will not pass, Mr. Speaker.
That's weird hearing the Liberals talk about that.
Colleagues,
Even your colleagues don't believe you.
The honourable member from Courtenay, Alberni.
Mr. Speaker, for 3 years, the Liberals have allowed a company in Union Bay to break apart a massive ship in the high tide zone without being in a self-contained floating dry dock. This is despite objections of the province, local communities, and First Nations. Nowhere in the world would this unregulated chaos be allowed to take place. A recent provincial inspection found the operations are discharging effluent more than 100 times the limit for copper and more than 13 times the limit for zinc. What will it finally take for the federal government to step in and put an end to this dangerous, unregulated shipbreaking?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as the member opposite knows, there's a federal responsibility, but there's also a provincial responsibility. And there is a responsibility to collaborate on every piece of what the member opposite talked about. We're going to continue to uphold our end on the DFO side. We ask the province to do the same.
Yes.
The honourable member from Spadina, Fort York.
Mr. Speaker, today is the first anniversary of the Hamas attack on Israel. On that horrific day, Hamas killed over 1,200 people,
across the floor, bro,
Canadians, and over 200 taken hostage. At home, in 1 year, there's been nearly 5,800 incidents of hatred and anti-Semitism, including Samadoun posters today for a Toronto event under the heading Long Live October 7th. Mr. Speaker, the government's pathetic condemnation of Hamas with no action on domestic pro-Hamas supporters does nothing to end violence and intimidation. Will the government give up its veiled support for terrorist sympathizers? The safety of our citizens is the only priority. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
I'll agree with one thing that independent member just said. The safety of our citizens is the only priority. That's why we have a national action plan to combat hatred. That's why we have a bill on the legislature floor right now, Bill C-63, that would target online radicalization that leads to anti-Semitism. How does somebody get to the point where they're targeting a Jewish day school, a Jewish daycare, or a Jewish synagogue? Because they are radicalized.
They're in the streets.
That same bill
dummy.
has augmentation of penalties for willful promotion of anti-Semitism, public incitement of hatred, and advocating genocide. That's a bill that not every party in this chamber supports, and that's what we need to get behind.
They're in the streets right now doing it.
Colleagues.
What's up with this gaslighting?
À la suite de discussions.
Following discussions among representatives of all parties in the House,
c'est tout fini.
It is my understanding that there is consent for a moment of silence to be observed for victims of the attack in Israel 1 year ago.
I understand there is agreement to observe a moment of silence in memory of the victims of the attack in Israel that happened a year ago. I now invite honourable members to rise. J'invite les honorables députés à se lever.
Yeah. So this is what's crazy, folks. Like, you have people in the streets right now that are calling for the extermination, to get rid of all Jews, basically, right? From the river to the sea, or from Lebanon to Palestine, Israel will be gone, or whatever the chants are. It's wild. Like, we literally, I made videos about it on MSB. It's there. You can find the videos on X. It's real. It's all there. And the Liberal government today has failed on multiple occasions. Many, the most, as Trump would say, the most, multiple times the most occasions to denounce what is happening and to do something about it. You had Pierre bring it up. You had Raquel Dancho bring it up. You had Melissa Lantsman bring it up. You had other conservative MPs bring it up. It's happening. And then the audacity that the Liberals have to say, you know what, we stand with Israel. Like, it just doesn't seem that way. There's so much hatred and divisiveness happening in Canada, and the Liberals are pandering.
Before I get to points of order,
to everybody.
One moment, please.
Oh, okay. See, look, using this right now, the mute button makes sense in this moment.
Colleagues,
because they had to discuss something.
Question period. There's a matter to which I would like to return. After reviewing the transcript, in one of his questions, the Leader of the Opposition used language that was very similar to language which was found unparliamentary in the past. Earlier this year, a member accused the Leader of the Opposition of pandering to a regime I think most of us would find odious. That member was asked to withdraw that comment. In his question today, the Leader of the Opposition accused the Minister of Foreign Affairs of something similar. As I have said before, there are ways to make our points without resorting to these types of comments. I would ask that the Leader of the Opposition withdraw his comment at the earliest opportunity.
Melissa Lansman's going to say something.
The honourable member. Point of order. The honourable member. The honourable parliamentary secretary.
So, Mr. Speaker, on the same point of order, one of the concerns that we've expressed in the past, and it's related to what it is that you just finished ruling out, the Leader of the Official Opposition, and we support your statement, Mr. Speaker, but we want to make it clear in terms of ensuring that all members are treated equally and that the Leader of the Conservative Party not be allowed to
shut the hell up
until he's actually given a formal apology.
That's not going to get passed. Pierre won't apologize for standing up to terrorism.
Already mentioned, as I just made in my declaration, and I think that addresses the points. And I'll invite all members, if they have questions, to read that. The honourable member from
SHUTDOWN
seeking unanimous consent.
Today marks the first and extremely dark anniversary of October 7th, when terrorists carried out the worst attack on Jews since the Holocaust. And after consultation with parties, if you seek it, you will find unanimous consent for the following motion: that this House unequivocally reaffirms Israel's right to defend itself from the terrorists who attack it, expresses support for the victims of October 7th and their families and the people of Israel, that calls for the immediate release of the 101 hostages still being held captive, condemns the grotesque rise in anti-Semitism and hate towards Jews in Canada over the past year, and condemns Hamas and Hezbollah as terrorist entities which must be eliminated. Thank you.
All those opposed to the honourable member moving the motion will please say nay. Agreed. The House has heard the terms of the motion. All those opposed to the motion will please say nay. Carried. Point of order. The honourable member from South Shore, St. Margaret's.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On September 26, the Speaker said the following in the House. The House has clearly ordered the production of certain documents, and that order has clearly not been fully complied with. You then went on to say that it cannot come to any other conclusion but then to find a prima facie question of privilege has been established. I'd like to table the...
I think the honourable member is moving into debate. It being 3:17, the House will now proceed to the taking of the deferred recorded division on the motion to concur in the 20th report of the Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills and Social Development and the status of persons with disabilities. Comme il est 15h17.
It being 3:17, the House will now proceed to the vote to adopt the 20th report of the Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills and Social Development and the status of persons with disabilities. Call in the members.
Matthew Galligan with a 5. Kind of want to see Jag bust into the House with WWF theme and start a fight with Pierre. That'd be pretty funny. Not gonna lie. Joe Brewer with the 10. Karina smells. Liar, liar, pants on fire. Hanging over a telephone wire. Thanks again, Joe. Don't forget, go study for your LSATs. Moody with the 2. They are panicking. Pierre for Prime Minister. Thank you, Moody. I appreciate that. Amanda George with the 2. Here for the crazy. Oh, yeah. Lots of craziness. This week is going to be bananas. Joe with the 10 again. Go Canucks, go. Go study, Joe. How about that one? Shauna with the 5. Hello, my beautiful Canadians. Please like, share, and subscribe to support our friend Jasper. Thank you, Shauna. I appreciate that.
Sierra?
Moody with the 5. Only 6 affordable units built when they accused Pierre. Maybe because housing was actually affordable under Stephen Harper. The Liberal dishonesty will not go over our heads.
Ms. Zerillo, seconded by Ms. Barron, moved that the 20th report of the Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills and Social Development and the persons of and the status of persons with disabilities presented on Wednesday, May 8th, 2024, be concurred in. The 10-minute period for members voting electronically has started, and the House will now proceed to the vote for members participating in person. All those in favour of the motion will please rise.
Ms. Ng. Monsieur Duclos.
All right, Stephen Patterson with the 50. Thank you, Stephen. I appreciate that. It's always the French and the Indigenous that want. Liberals, Pierre, and the NDP are all the same. No good. I say the Prime Minister should be 2 terms only. In the USA, Justine Blackface would be destroyed. We need a real true-born and raised Ontario Canadian Prime Minister. Well, I appreciate the 50. I definitely agree that in order to be Prime Minister, you should be Canadian-born, 100%. I personally do not believe that the Conservatives and Pierre are like the NDP and the Liberals. Call me naive, call me optimistic, but I do think that they are the party for change. But nonetheless, thank you. Stephen with the follow-up 10 saying, hello, please answer my question.
Mr. Fonseca.
This is why I do read off the Super Chats before question period starts, and then right before question period starts, I also do announce that I won't be reading them until after question period, which would be right now.
Mr. McDonald Avalon. Mr. McKinnon
to not interrupt.
Mr. McLeod. Mr. Morrissey.
The debates.
Madame Shanahan.
Bunny LeBlanc with the 3 months membership. Thank you very much, Bunny. Why won't they answer the question? I mean,
Miss Yip.
A lot of people call it questions without answers.
Louis Kitchener-Conestoga. Mr. Van Bynen. Mr. Baines. Ms. Bradford. Mr. Shahal. Madame Chatel.
Shauna with the 5. Where's Trudeau? Yeah, so Trudeau was supposed to be there. He's in Parliament.
Mr. Meow.
He was walking around outside. We had confirmation that he was making his way into the House of Commons.
Mr. Scheer.
But nonetheless, he didn't show up, so I'm not really sure.
Mr. Perkins. Mr. Brock. Monsieur Deltel. Mrs.
Stephen with the follow-up 10. Help the people outside of Canada. Worry about real-born Canadians first. And first. Yes, absolutely.
Mr. Ellis.
Canada is spending way too much money on problems that are not Canadian.
Cooper.
I think that that's kind of the conservative mentality, is that we need to spend more money and more attention to what's going on here within our borders. Support our own.
Mr. Workington. Mr. Chong.
Moody with a 2. Charter rights for me, but not for thee.
Seaback.
Yep.
Ms. Ferrari.
Shauna again with the 5. They should all be forced to wear sponsorship jackets so we know who they really work for.
Monsieur Brassard. Mrs. Goodridge. Monsieur Godin.
Yeah, I guess the Liberals would be wearing WEF jackets, right?
Mrs. Roberts. Mr. Melillo. Ms. Gladue. Mrs. Cramp-Nyman. Madame Vienne. Mr. Patzer.
Stephen with the other 2. Thank you very much, Stephen.
Mr. Shipley. Mr. Muse.
Shauna with the 2. Liberals be looking like a clown.
Mr. Waugh.
Jordan with the 5.
Miss Root.
We investigated ourselves and we found nothing wrong.
Mr. Genereux.
Has no one told them that we don't trust them yet?
Lobb.
That's a funny one there, Jordan.
Mr. Davidson. Mr. Martel. Mr. Gould. Mr. Caputo. Mr. Epp. Mr. Zimmer. Mr. Dreesham.
Jazz with the 2. Thoughts on BC election?
Mr. Albus. Mr. Bragdon.
Electing the Conservative government. Yeah, man, I'm pro John Russett. I heard him speak live. I thought he was really good. He seemed very sharp, very pro BC. BC has a real chance at becoming, a very patriotic province, kind of the way Alberta is.
Mr. Arnold.
And so I think that that's a really good thing for British Columbia.
Mr. Soroka. Mrs. Vecchio. Mr. Carey. Mr. Dowdle.
Jordan with the 5. Yet they continue to support countries that throw women and get tossed off of buildings. word in there, obviously I can't use. Yeah, I mean that's the Liberal way.
Monsieur Simard. Madame de Bellefeuille. Madame Michaud.
Mim with the 5. Freeland must be so scared to go to jail. She seems to be eating her emotions. Every time she stands up, it seems like her waist is an inch bigger. Oh my goodness. Well, I'm definitely trying to pull back on how much I comment on people's looks. It's easy to do that. It's not right, but I mean, I don't know if many people would disagree with what you've said.
Miss Matheson.
Kimmy with the 5. When sustainable is mentioned, it means United Nations, WEF Bill 293, and C40 Network. 293, authority to shut down dairy, poultry, etc. farms. Oh, wow.
Miss Zerillo. Miss Kwan. Miss May, Sandwich Gulf Islands.
Name that band. Justin, Christia, Beaker, Freeland. Jagmeet and Randy, I'll go first. The black and the white stripes. Shauna with the 5.
The House will now wait for the electronic voting period to end before resuming its proceedings.
That's brutal. Kells the Ghost with the... I gotta lower that sound for myself. Kells the Ghost with the $2. Plenty of bugs to eat for Thanksgiving, guys. No big deal. Is Thanksgiving actually this weekend? Holy smokes. Trish with the 5. Thank you. Did I lose my spot here? Where was I? Oh, yeah. Mr. Peachy with the 2. Where's Dictator Trudeau? Weak leader. Yeah, I don't know, man. He was supposed to be there. Like, he was on the premise. He's there. Like, he's somewhere in the House of Commons in Parliament. He's just not on the floor. Kind of bizarre. Ryan Donald with the 5. I live in the city of 100 Hellos or Helos. How is that fair in Alberta? Thanks for that. Deborah with the 699 Conservative MP. Damien Kurek, father, passed away this past weekend suddenly. Please keep his family in your prayers. Oh my goodness, I did not know about that. Thank you, Deborah, for bringing that to everyone's attention. Dibs on dabs with a 279. Thank you. No message attached. Crimson Iris with 5. I went to Sobeys to pick up some grocery after work today. $48.76 for a pack of carrots, 4 green bell peppers, and a half a pound of stewing beef. What the hell is happening in Canada? Has anyone even looked at how much a turkey costs right now? I'll be honest, folks. I'm not really in charge of the groceries here, right? Like my wife is kind of on that ball. I mean, we go together. Sometimes I go, but it's not like I don't know how expensive food is. Of course I know. But I mean, that's just crazy. Anyone in the chat, in the live chat, know how much the price of turkey is right now? Someone saying it's $700 for my family of 6. No, not for Thanksgiving. That's got to be for something else. I missed that one. Piston Brook with a 699. Does this vote that they're voting on now allow the Liberal government to continue running the country? No, that's not what this is. That's not what this is. This is concurrence in committee reports, Canada Disabilities, Standing Committee on Human Resource Skills and Social Development on the status of persons with disabilities. It's about the Canada Disability Benefit. It's likely going to be unanimous for yays. I don't think there was a single person that voted against it. Meekers with a 699. Rustatter EB won't help disabled people in BC. It's shameful. I wish someone can ask them why. It's horrible. No one is, and they aren't. I don't believe you are correct. I don't see how Rustad is against helping disabled people. I don't see that in the playing cards, but nonetheless, thank you for the $6.99. A channel member? No, not a channel member. Somebody just bought a sticker pack, but it was not a channel member. If you are a channel member and you want to purchase one of the sticker packs, you can find the code for 15% off for channel members, which is linked on the community tab of the channel that you are a channel member of. So if you're a channel member here on House of Canada, go to the community tab and get the code for the 15% off for the stickers, the sticker packs right now.
I wish to inform the House that the electronic voting period has ended. If members were not able to vote due to technical difficulties, they may now use the raise hand function and the chair will recognize them.
Mr. Richards.
I vote yes.
Mr. Richards, yay pour.
Ms. Haidu.
I vote yes.
Ms. Haidu, yay pour.
Madame Posey.
En faveur.
Madame Posey, yay pour.
Monsieur Sauvé. Monsieur Sauvé, est-ce que votre micro est ouvert?
Oui, pour, je vote pour.
Monsieur Sauvé, yay pour.
Le bureau va maintenant...
The table will now compile the results of the vote.
Yeas pour 327, 327. Nays contre, 0, aucun.
Je déclare la motion adoptée.
I declare the motion carried.
Now recognize, colleagues, I'm going to ask you to leave the room quietly because I have a question of privilege which is being raised by the Honourable Member for Thornhill. The Honourable Member.
Mr. Speaker, I'm rising on a question of privilege arising from some very disturbing events which occurred just outside this place over the weekend. On Saturday, the Parliamentary Protective Service, for which you are responsible for and provide policy direction to, imposed an ideological test for entry on the grounds of Parliament Hill. According to a video posted online, a visitor is seen being denied access because he was not, quote, not a supporter of Palestine and doesn't recognize Palestinian state.
We made a video about that.
Of course, was denied access to Parliament Hill for the sole reason that he didn't hold a political opinion considered acceptable to whoever approved this requirement for entry. And to my knowledge, that's the first time that access to Parliament has been subjected to a screening with political points of view, at least documented as such. Parliament is the beating heart of Canadian democracy, and it is where Canadians often come to exercise one of the most cherished constitutional rights guaranteed to them under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and freedom of expression. So to cherry-pick that point of view as expressed on Parliament Hill is simply not consistent with Canadian values. So now it should be made clear, though, that this is in no way directed at the officer, but the question, the policy,
it should be
policy direction that you, the Speaker, are responsible for. It should also be made clear that the very fact that anyone cannot access Parliament Hill because of an opinion they hold, or worse, they cannot be trusted to be in the same place as someone who holds an entirely different opinion, is a stain on the state of our country and the divisiveness that has been allowed to fester here. And it's a country that's seen hate crimes rise 250% since 2015. A country that has seen lawlessness and the mob rule our streets. Two groups of people who have opposing views cannot enter at the same time to express those views in one place. What has become of this country? Conservatives believe that Parliament Hill must be safe and secure while remaining open and accessible to all, including those peacefully protesting. All points of view from all Canadians should be heard. That is their constitutional right, regardless of whether they are politically fashionable amongst the elites. The litmus test about recognizing a Palestinian state as the key to enter, in fact, is also the position of the Government of Canada and many of the Canadian allies, so I'm not sure what that was all about. Had the Conservative members of Parliament sought to access the House of Commons, our place of work on Saturday would have been denied access because we would not or could not have satisfied that ideological test, even though members are free to access the parliamentary precinct, and that is a well-established privilege of Parliament. The House of Commons Procedure and Practice, the third edition, explains that on page 107 that, quote, in order to fulfill their parliamentary duties, members should be able to go about their parliamentary business undisturbed. And continuing on page 110, Boscan-Gagnon write, quote, incidents involving physical obstruction such as traffic barriers, security cordons, and union picket lines, either impeding members' access to the parliamentary precinct or blocking their free movement within the precinct, as well as occurrences of physical assault, have been found to be prima facie in a case of privilege. So, as also explained on paragraph 15 of the 66th report of the Standing Committee on Procedure and House Affairs tabled in April of 1999, quote, one of the privileges of members of this House of Commons is the right to unimpeded access to Parliament and the parliamentary precincts. Members are entitled to go about their parliamentary business undisturbed. This privilege dates back to at least the early 18th century, and it is part of the heritage of all legislative bodies and trace their origins to the British parliamentary tradition. It is based on the preeminent right of the House to attendance and to the service of its members. Any obstruction of members constitutes a breach of privilege and the contempt of the House, end quote. The point was repeated in the same committee's 26th report tabled in May of 2012, quote, as a part of parliamentary privilege, members of this House of Commons have the right of unimpeded and unfettered access to the parliamentary precincts and are entitled to go about their parliamentary duties and functions undisturbed without any form of interference, end quote. Joseph Mangot makes the simple point that in his parliamentary privilege in Canada's second edition at page 176 that, quote, no impediment should be placed on the member in going about his parliamentary business, whether in the House or on the way to the House or while on his way home. Further down on the same page, he wrote, quote, since Parliament Hill has always been a public place, restricting the movement of the general public on grounds we would probably be considered excessive, end quote. To punctuate that point, he added a footnote, footnote 47, which reads, quote, there is little, if any, restriction on the grounds of Parliament Hill, even during the 1970 October crisis, end quote. Shortly following Pierre Trudeau's invocation of the War Measures Act, the former Standing Committee on Procedure and Organization recommended in its second report presented to this House in March 1971, quote, your committee believes the main problem in connection with security on Parliament is to strike reasonable balance between the importance of allowing the public ready access to the House of Commons on one hand and the necessity of preserving the security of the House on the other. Your committee was governed at all times by the belief that Parliament should not be isolated from the people as a result of exaggerated security measures, and that it is important in a democratic society that members of Parliament should continue to have direct communications with the public. Consequently, your committee has conducted that whatever security measures are provided, it must be reasonable and consistent with the right of the public to come to Parliament. It's not easy to reconcile these two imperatives, but your committee feels that the balance should always be in favor of permitting the public reasonable and proper access to Parliament without intruding on in any obvious way on the undoubted rights of citizens to approach Parliament, end quote. That just sounds like common sense to me, Mr. Speaker. The Canadians who elect us have a right to come to Parliament and make their voices heard, and yet it seems that they've been chucked out the window in favor of a shocking news that ideological purity tests are now needed to access Parliament Hill, a very high impediment that is being imposed. And in short, the ideological test that Conservative MPs and some even Liberal MPs and many, many Canadians in this case would fail to pass, blocking politicians, especially opposition politicians, from accessing the legislature, which they were elected to plainly represent their constituents, is undemocratic and un-Canadian. And it's the sort of thing that dictatorships do, Mr. Speaker. So to be sure, Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to lay any blame on the constable who was seen in the video. Indeed, I don't hold any single frontline member of this service responsible. They would have simply been following directions decided much higher up, conjuring up.
I mean, that is also a good point.
Ideological tests for accessing Parliament is not something you would expect any single constable to have simply freelanced. So it certainly comes from somewhere. Subsection 79.52 of Parliament of Canada Act explains that, quote, the Speaker and the Senate and of the Senate and the Speaker of the House are, as custodians of powers, of privileges, rights, and immunities for their respective House and of members of those Houses responsible for services, end quote. You, sir, are responsible for that service. And subsection 79.54 of the same Act adds, quote, the Director shall lead the integrated security operations throughout the parliamentary precinct and Parliament Hill under the joint general policy direction of the Speaker of the Senate and the Speaker of the House, end quote. And beyond the matter of any policy directions that you may or may not have given, it is important to understand that Section 79.55 of the Act vests responsibility for, quote, the physical security services throughout the parliamentary precinct of Parliament Hill delivered by the PPS, the RCMP, and the RCMP. In fact, the Director of the PPS is required by subsection 79.56 of the Act to be a member of the RCMP. Subsection 5 of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police Act makes quite clear that the Liberal Cabinet appoints the RCMP's top boss and the Commissioner, quote, who under the direction of the Minister has control and management of the force and all matters connected to the force, end quote. At the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, this boils down to one essential question. Was the direction to require the Parliamentary Protective Service to apply a political litmus test to anyone seeking access to Parliament Hill this past weekend a general policy direction which you approved, or was it the direction of the Minister of Public Safety in relation to his control of the RCMP, which is responsible for physical security of the Hill? No matter how you cut it, which Liberal made the decision of ideological tests of political points of view are shocking and unacceptable and an impediment to members of Parliament who must have free and ready access to the parliamentary precinct at all times, not to mention all Canadians that should be able to come on the Hill at all times on all issues. Should you agree, Mr. Speaker, that this is a prima facie case of privilege, I intend to move a motion to refer this matter to the Procedure and House Affairs Committee for investigation. By allowing for this issue to be studied in committee, it will allow for those key questions to be answered. Who gave the directive? Was it you, Mr. Speaker, or was it the Minister of Public Safety who approved this ideological test for Parliament Hill access, and whether ideological tests have been approved in Hill access before this time? These are very important issues. They are very important concerns, and Parliament stands for free speech in its very name. The grounds which surround our building ought to stand equally for free speech and not a safe speech bubble, or for some speech, or for acceptable speech, even worse, and reserved only for those opinions that are shared with the government or shared with elites or fashionable at the time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Wow. Phenomenal speech.
Thank the honourable member for her intervention. I see that the honourable member from New Westminster Burnaby is rising on his feet on the same matter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as our practice, I'm asking for consideration to review the blues and potentially come back in the next day or two on this issue.
And I see that the honourable member from Kingston and the Islands is also rising on a similar matter.
Likewise, Mr. Speaker, we would like the opportunity to review and come back to you in timely fashion.
Come on, Mark. We know you live on X. You saw it.
From Thornhill, who raised this question of privilege, said I look forward to getting back to the House as soon as possible once the other interventions are made. I wish to inform the House that because of the deferred recorded divisions, government orders will be extended by 12 minutes. Alors, je désire informer la Chambre qu'en raison du...
I wish to inform the House that due to the...
Ya must Justin hail these nights with the $5 super chat. That, sir, is a good username. That is very, very clever, original. I like it.
Earpieces. We'll have to adjust.
Every person has a price. I'm just surprised how low it is.
Using their earpiece at this
Napoleon Dynamite.
Readjust the volume.
Thank you for that. Folks, I think that's it. I think we are...
Tabling of documents. Il est de mon devoir de déposer sur le...
It is my duty to
we're
lay it
done.
on the table pursuant to subsection 94(2) of the Access to Information Act and to subsection 72(2) of the Privacy Act. The reports of the Office of the Chief Electoral
Yeah, folks,
Officer
this is it. We're done.
on the
We're done. That's it. That was the final point of order. They're moving on to something else now. Oh, my goodness. Oh, that's the end of question period. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you, everybody, for liking the stream. We're just about to hit 2,000 likes on this stream in particular. I think over 40,000 people have watched the stream so far, and over 15,000 chat messages. Let me just get those numbers pulled up here. Nonetheless, it was really good. It was nice to see Pierre in the house do his thing. It's unfortunate that we didn't see Justin Trudeau. Where's Justin? Where'd Justin go? Where's Justin? 17.2 thousand chat. 17.2 thousand. Almost 20,000 chat messages during this live stream. That's incredible. Phenomenal. Just about 40,000 views. Pretty awesome. Nonetheless, this is where we're going to end it. Thank you, everybody, for liking the stream. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. I think we're pretty close to 117,000 subscribers. If a couple hundred people right now out of the 3,500 that are still watching are not subscribed, now would be a phenomenal time to do it, and click and tap that bell notification, right? That tiny little bell notification, so you can actually be notified, get push notifications to your phone or your device of upcoming videos, but more importantly, these live streams, so we can just grow the community together and stay informed and have a good time, right? Peace and love, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your Monday. Stay tuned, though. Stay tuned to don't go too far drifting away from the news, right? Because it is October 7th, and I mean, shit's gonna hit the fan. Shit's gonna hit the fan in the Middle East and Canada. Something's about to happen. I think we can all feel it. But nonetheless, thanks for all the support. Thanks for all the chats. Thank you, everybody, for joining into the conversation. And we'll see you guys same time tomorrow. Bye for now. Enjoy the rest.